guys, how's it going? Today we are planting the very first shrubs of the season in the ground. I'm so excited. I've been excited for this day for a while. By the time we were ready to plant out in the south garden last year, the new garden we're developing, it was later on in the season. There were no spring interest shrubs available, so no forsythias, no lilacs could be found anywhere. So I knew this spring I really wanted to start in focusing on that and adding some color in, because when we go out there I'll show you there's really not a lot to look at. So right here we have some show-off forsythias. Absolutely stunning. So there's no bare branches on the bottom like a lot of other forsythias. They bloom all the way to the bottom, like almost touching the soil, all the way to the tippy top of their branches. So the whole plant is in color. The whole plant just glows. Now this one grows about 5 to 6 feet tall and wide, which is perfect for where they're going because I have a lot of space to fill. But there are a couple others in this same series, the show-off series. There's the Starlet, which grows about 3 by 3, and then there's show-off Sugar Baby, which is a little bit smaller, 1.5 to 3 feet tall and wide. The Starlet and Sugar Baby look fairly similar in size, but they have a little bit of a different habit. So the Starlet is a little bit more open, kind of has some arms that kind of stick up a little bit, a little more airy on the top, and Sugar Baby is a little bit more dense and compact. All beautiful. They all bloom the same way from top to bottom. These are really easy to take care of, honestly, and that's why it's so nice that there are so many sizes available. You really want to pick the size where you can just let it grow to its full size so that you don't need to be pruning on it or thinking about pruning on it, because if you prune at the wrong time, you could prune the blooms off. They bloom on old wood. You can tell that. I mean, this is old wood down in here. This is wood from last year. That's where they bloom. If you were to cut any of this wood off of the top to size control it, you would be cutting off blooms because they form their buds to bloom the previous year. So if you were to need to prune on something like this, which hopefully again you've chosen the size that you can just let it get to its full size, you would want to do it immediately after they're done blooming in the spring. So as soon as they drop all their petals, you can go in and size control it, and then they'll still have time to form buds for next year's bloom. They are deer resistant. In fact, all of these are. The lilacs and the forsythias are deer resistant if that's something you deal with. Zone 5 through 8, they like full sun, and they're heat tolerant, which is something that I have to think about here. We have weeks and weeks and weeks over 100 degrees in the summertime, so we have to have some things, especially out there where they're so exposed, that can handle it. And forsythias are used pretty commonly and widely in our area because they are so tough. Okay, so the lilacs over here. Bloomerang dark purple. Absolutely beautiful blooms on this one. So we planted one up in our Versailles garden near a Leyland cypress. It was pretty close to the cypress when we first planted it. It did great for a couple years. It's still doing great, but that cypress has kind of started to grow over the top of it a little bit. So it almost looks like the lilac is poofing out from the bottom, but it still blooms every season beautifully. Now the difference between a bloomerang and like a regular lilac is that this one will repeat bloom through the season. And again, it's fairly low maintenance. You can go in after it does its early spring bloom and trim the blooms off, and what that will do, because if you leave the blooms, it won't keep it from reblooming later in the season, but that plant will be sending energy into trying to form seeds in those blooms. So if you could lightly shear those off, just cut them off right below the bloom, it will eliminate the plant sending energy into those, which will help it have more of a robust bloom later on in the season. It'll lull for just a little bit, and then about midsummer it'll pick back up and start blooming through late fall. The blooms on this type, they're not as big as a traditional lilac, but they're decent size. I want to say that I see them about this big, and they're very fragrant, and it's fun that you have that interest through the season, not just in the spring. So just with that little tiny bit of maintenance, just shearing off that first bloom, you'll have a really tidy looking plant, and it will have a really beautiful full bloom for the rest of the season. Grows about 4 to 6 feet tall and wide, so this one's going out into the south garden. They like sun. These are actually a high pH tolerant plant. Lilacs do really well here in our high pH, and I appreciate that so much about this plant. And then this one here, the baby Kim, you may have heard of Miss Kim. It's a fairly common lilac, but it grows about 6 to 8 feet tall and wide. That's a pretty decent sized shrub. That's pretty big. You need to have a space to put that in. This one grows about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. So if you've wanted that lilac color, the smell, the pretty shaped leaves, because they're pretty even when they're not in bloom, this is a good option because it stays so compact. I also think it'd be really pretty to have this in a container for the spring season with maybe like some pansies or something around the base of it. Really pretty, and you can see the color of the blooms, a purple lavender color, and they also are a high pH tolerant plant, deer resistant, and they like a full sun position. The thing about lilacs that you do want to make sure is that they're in a spot that's well draining. They don't want to be sitting in water. And the last thing about the lilacs, zone 3 through 8. So incredibly winter hardy, which is very nice for those of you who live in a very cold area to have something that can survive and do so beautifully in your garden. So I think what we should do, since we're right near the spot I want to put this one, so the baby Kim is staying up here closer to the house because it stays smaller. Right in this area, I'm going to be developing this whole flower bed this year. In fact, we just started by transplanting roses from behind the Hartley up into this area, and we've got a few other shrubs. It gets much thicker toward that end, but I want to start in with some things, and we need spring color. Obviously, there's not a lot going on here. So in this space, right around it, I've got white Wands Veronica sitting here. I'm going to be planting something right here in this hole. And then we've got the pink rose. So I thought it might be really pretty to just tuck this one in right here, and it can kind of fill in the space between the Veronica and the rose that's here. And then we'll come in later with something right around the front. I think that'll be really pretty. So I'm gonna get all my planting gear. We'll get this one in the ground. All of them quick, and there's an extra shrub I want to show you that I forgot about, and it's at its peak and looking amazing. So there's really not much else to say about this one right here, the baby Kim. Although if you do get close on it, you can see all of these right here, these darker spots. These are all the buds for the panicles that will expand and open up. We will get to enjoy some blooms off of this one this year. So excited about that. So the black cat pussy willow is just looking beautiful. It's at the end of this walkway, so let's head down there real quick before we head out to the south garden. Look at this shrub, you guys. I planted this black cat pussy willow 3 years ago, and it is so absolutely beautiful. It produces these gorgeous charcoal gray catkins right there. I think that's what they're called. Anyway, fuzzy, soft, on these beautiful red stems right here. Now this shrub is kind of a problem solver for me on this end of our property, because this flower bed in particular holds onto a lot of moisture. We have really heavy soil right here. So it was a perfect shrub to put in here that likes more wet soils. It can tolerate that. So if you have a problem spot in a sunny area, this is a really great choice. Now it is a zone 4 through 7, and it will grow 10 to 12 feet tall and wide. So it's a massive shrub, but you can size control it, which is what I'm attempting to do. So not this last year, but the year before, I think, I coppice pruned it, which means I pretty much took it all the way down to the ground. It produces these blooms, the buds and blooms on old wood. So you would need to do that if you were going to prune it like that, which I will do this year, because you can see that it is starting to like climb out over the walkway there. You'll do it immediately after it's done blooming. So once these have kind of faded and gone away, I'll go in and chop it down again. It'll grow back fresh. It'll keep it smaller, and the plant will still have time to form buds to bloom next year as well. And I can use these in some spring containers, and that was kind of my thought process on leaving it last year and letting it put on some size so that I could utilize some of these gorgeous branches. But I just thought you guys might enjoy seeing this. This is a beautiful, beautiful shrub. Okay, we're in the south garden now. If you take a look around me, it just looks like a lot of brown out here. So this is why I want to add some gorgeous color like this for spring. If you do look closely though, we did plant a bunch of tulips and daffodils out here last fall, and they are coming up, which is so exciting to me, so that I know we will enjoy the forsythia color early, and then right after that our tulips will start to bloom. So we're working on having a succession of color out here, and you got to start somewhere, right? So we started with an old kind of dead looking field. And then this is all wood chips that we have our local arborist drop off. And I gotta tell you, I really have loved this way of mulching because our native soil color is about the same color as the mulch. So when I go in and do this, like the soil looks great right now because it's got a lot of moisture in it, but once it dries out, it's pretty light colored. But I don't even notice it because it just blends in with the mulch. When we do plantings like with the baby Kim around the darker colored mulch, I always feel like I need to remulch around the whole plant to make it look tidy. So there's a huge freedom out here in this garden and her whole method of planting, having it be more natural. It's just been such a fun area. But I'm going to love this. So the little trio of color here right below our red pansy, or forest pansy rather, red bud. So this will have some color as well. Again, these get I gotta watch myself. I'm gonna step on tulips. These get 4 to 6 feet tall and wide. So they will fill in this area right here and be just such beautiful color every single spring. I'm so excited for it. I still need to water these in, which I will do today. The thing about planting early in the spring, it's a little deceiving because it's so cool, and most of the time most places are getting more moisture. Even we do in the spring, we get more moisture here. So you think that you plant things and you can just leave them alone and not really worry about keeping them moist as much as you do during the summer. And while that is sort of true, you have to keep a close eye on fresh plantings like this. Like I will water them in today, even though there's moisture in the soil, and I check on my new plants every single day. I just make it a habit of doing that most of the time. I mean, I have my lapses as well. I have lost a few shrubs due to forgetting when we have a lot going on, but I usually will run drip to things right away, which our drip system is not on yet. So right now I'll be hand watering these until our drip system is on, and then they will be getting consistent moisture. The important thing is just to make sure that they don't dry out, because these, while everything else looks dormant, no leaves on them, these have blooms that the plant is feeding. I mean, they're active growth at the moment. So the bloomerang ended up right over here. I'm thinking we could probably utilize a little bit more, like maybe dot a few. It's right here, hardly see it. It kind of blends in. So bloomerang here, maybe if we did like a lazy kind of loose drift of them through here, wouldn't that be pretty? So this one will pick up and start coloring once the forsythia is done. So again, we'll have our succession of bloom, and then out here there's some daffodils popping through here. There's more daffs right there. More daffs right there. It's just gonna be so fun, you guys. I cannot wait, just in maybe a couple of weeks time, what this area is gonna look like. One other thing I wanted to mention about this bloomerang lilac. So if you're wanting to go in and shear off that first flush of blooms to help the later blooms be more robust, you also want to make sure when the plant is putting on a lot of active growth early in the season that you're keeping it well watered, keeping a nice layer of mulch around the bottom of the plant, and you can give both the forsythia and the lilac fertilizer early on in the spring. So you could do like a rose tone or a plant tone would be two really good choices, just to keep that active growth really healthy, because that's the growth that the second flush of blooms will come out on. So it's really important to keep your plants really going strong during that first part of the season. And that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, first of many planting videos out here. I am just so excited about it. Excited to have some fresh color. It's needed this time of year, and it's needed out in this garden. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.